Good morning. This is October 21st, 2015, and this is the regular meeting of the Ottawa City Commission. Let's have roll call.
Mayor Skidmore, Commissioner Dickinson,
Present. Commissioner
Reed,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
Commissioner Graves, present.
Okay, looks like we're all here except the mayor. I'd like to welcome all of you that are here today in the room, as well as on KOFO and on our public access, and those two of you who may watch this later online. Let's go ahead and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then followed by the invocation from Father Bill Fisher from Sacred Heart Catholic Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, coming before you with our acknowledgement of your greatness and our dependence on your strength, we ask for your strength and your wisdom. May we judge fairly, in peace, for the good, the greatest good, for safety and proper order in our community. Help us to do your will because you will it, in the way that you will it, for as long as you will it. Lord, enlighten our understanding to proper and appropriate service of you and our neighbor, with an appropriate perspective on things material and eternal. Thank you for your past blessings. Turn to you in thanksgiving for your blessings, present and future. Pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Father Bill. You may be seated. That moves us to our consent agenda, which includes minutes from the October 5th study session and the October 7th regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I would approve that I would move that we approve the consent agenda, which includes those two sets of minutes in today's agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we're moving on. Do we have any public comments today?
We do not.
Okay, we will skip that section then. And that moves us on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Okay. Moves us on to new business, number 10.
Proclamation recognizing October 22nd, 2015 as Lights On After School Day.
Lights On After School Day serves to remind citizens to support after-school programs. Jamie Kiter, After-School Program Director, will accept this proclamation, and it will be read by Commissioner Reed.
And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the City of Ottawa, Kansas stands firmly committed to quality after-school programs because they provide safe, challenging, engaging, and fun learning experiences to help children and youth develop their social, emotional, physical, cultural, and academic skills. They support working families by ensuring their children are safe and productive after the regular school day ends. They build stronger communities by involving our students, parents, business leaders, and adult volunteers in the lives of our young people, thereby promoting positive relationships among children, youth, families, and adults. They engage families, schools, and diverse community partners in advancing the welfare of our children. Whereas the elementary school's Reach for the Stars after-school program and the middle school Whirlwind after-school program have provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education and well-being of our youth, grounded in the principle that quality after-school programs help our children become successful adults. Whereas Lights On After School, a national celebration of after-school programs on October 23rd, promotes the critical importance of quality after-school programs in the lives of children, their families, and their communities. Whereas more than 28 million children in the United States have parents who work outside the home, and 14.3 million children have no place to go after school. Whereas many after-school programs across the country are facing funding shortfalls so severe that they are being forced to close their doors and turn off their lights. Now therefore, the governing body of the City of Ottawa, Kansas does hereby proclaim October 22nd as Lights On After School Day and encourages our community to engage in innovative after-school programs and activities that ensure the lights stay on and the doors stay open for all children after school. Signed this 21st day of October 2015 by our Mayor, Mike Skidmore.
Jamie? Should I speak?
Well, thank you for having us here today again. This is our 9th year of our program, our 9th Lights On, and our 9th proclamation, and we hope to continue that from here for a long time. As introduced, my name is Jamie Kiter, and I have been with Reach for the Stars for I'm going on 5 years now, and I find a deep connection to it and a very humbling, heartfelt feeling knowing that we can make a difference in our students' lives. After-school programming is the lead program in keeping kids in school and graduating, and we're proud that we can be a part of that. This year, our event is called Spotlight on Literacy, and obviously it's going to be a literacy program tonight, or tomorrow night. So what the kids have been learning about, front cover to back cover, all parts of the book. It's not just the story and the illustration. And they are really going on with this. They're really being very creative, and we have iPads and all that other technology to help them research really what they need to know about it, what it takes to write a book. They are also illustrating and writing their own books, which will be on display tomorrow, and they'll be able to take them home. And some of the stories are pretty comical, and some of the boys are, superheroes, and the girls are fairy tales and princesses. But it's really good to see their ideas, and maybe if this strikes them to want to become an author or an illustrator, then that's great. We've also played a part in that. We're extremely excited that we're going to have 2 presenters from Ottawa University come tomorrow who have written and illustrated a book that just was published last week, and we have it in today. It's called Bread, 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 and it's by Gloria Creed-DeCook and Karen Onesorge. They're going to come in and do a Literature Fest kind of presentation to our students, showing them how they came up with the story, how they came up with the illustrations, and the process of becoming published. And so we're doing full circle with the whole literacy event. And we're really excited to have them. Our program will be tomorrow at Lincoln Elementary at 5:45-ish, depending on when everybody gets in and we can get started. But we welcome you all, and we're just here to have a great time. Oh, and it's Bread, Bread, Bread is the book, and in there is a fig recipe, and Gloria is actually making this fig recipe. It's from her family, and we're going to provide bread and other snacks there too, but they're going to have jam and bread tomorrow to have a little bit more personal touch to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. That moves us on to number 11.
Proclamation recognizing October 2015 as National Arts and Humanities Month.
This proclamation recognizes the importance of arts and humanity, and the importance arts and humanities play in the lives of our citizens. Alice Joy Lewis from Ottawa Suzuki Strings will be accepting the proclamation, and the proclamation reads as such. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades, and whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and whereas arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of every American, and whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our economy by contributing $698 billion to the U.S. economy, adding 62 additional jobs created for every 100 from the new demand for the arts, and by supporting 4.7 million workers in the arts and cultural sector. Now, therefore, the governing body of the City of Ottawa does hereby proclaim the month of October 2015 as Arts and Humanities Month, and calls upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our city, signed this 21st day of October by the Mayor, Mike Skidmore. Alice Joy? want to say something about Suzuki?
Well, it is without question that a great nation is known by its arts and humanities, and a great city is known by its arts and humanities. And this has been an environment for the development of a Suzuki program over many, many years that has allowed it, encouraged it, nurtured it to flourish. We are, as a local program, coming upon our 50th year. So that's a long time. That's a long time. And the environment of the city, the encouragement of the people, the businesses, the individuals who realize that a not-for-profit arts organization needs all kinds of support. It needs attendance, it needs encouragement, it often needs financial help. And so all of this has flourished in the city of Ottawa. So I am delighted and honored on behalf of all the arts and humanities organizations to accept this proclamation. I do believe that all of the arts in Ottawa have a very important place in many people's lives. We have a community arts council, we have a Swan Arts developing, we have an artists guild, we have the Shutterbugs who take photographs, we have a writers guild, we have, of course, many arts and humanities contributions from Ottawa University. So we are fortunate as a city and fortunate as arts organizations to have the sort of situation that we have here. As you know, for many, many years, not 50 yet, but 41 last year, we have brought people to the community for Suzuki summer programs. That also is a long time. And Ottawa's name is in the circles of Suzuki known as a place where you can come and really have some really wonderful experiences in regard to music making. So that's very exciting. We have been fortunate to be recognized by the folks at the Starling Foundation with a sizable grant to bring the Brian Lewis Young Artist Program here. And it will happen this summer. We are taking one summer off from the other events to sort of reorganize our lives and look for how we want to shape them in the future. But the Brian Lewis Young Artist Program is funded so that the students are top-notch artists. They come tuition-free to this event in our city. And so it's pretty exciting, and the faculty come from places like the Juilliard School, the Eastman School of Music, the Cleveland School of Music, University of Texas, and so forth. So I am delighted and honored, as I said before, to accept this proclamation for arts and humanities. I appreciate what the city does in recognizing the arts and humanities in the city, and I encourage everybody to participate. Come to programs, take up writing, do some art, play the violin. It's never too late, And we have a wonderful early childhood education class. My little granddaughter is there at this moment because it meets every Wednesday morning, and it's quite a wonderful thing to see our little babies developing the kinds of skills that can lead them to be good participants in music making. And that class is for babies to age 3. Sometime you ought to come to just see what it's like. It's really a joyful experience and lots of fun. So thank you again so much to each of the commissioners.
Thank you, Alice Troy. Okay, that moves us on to item 12.
New employees in the Ottawa Police Department.
Okay, those are listed there on our agenda, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that up to Lieutenant Waterman to introduce them.
Good morning. Today I have the privilege of introducing our new police employees. If you guys want to come up. If you can raise your hand when I call your names, so they'll be able to put a name with a face. Amy Carlson. She's our Special Services Officer. Amy Carlson was hired on September 23rd. She grew up north of Ottawa and currently resides in Ottawa. She attended Appanoose and Pomona High School, went to Neosho Community College. She worked both in Ottawa and Lawrence Walmart Supercenters, worked her way up after 10 years to the position of Assistant Store Manager. She's married to Jared Carlson, and they have 2 daughters, Madeline, 8, and Olivia, 1. Sarah Frazee. Sarah was hired on September 28th. She grew up in Olathe and now lives in Lawrence. She has a bachelor's degree from Kansas University. Sarah's a certified officer who worked last for KU Public Safety. She enjoys hunting and fishing with her father and working with her Dutch Shepherd Sabre. Chris Forsberg was hired on October 5th. He was born in Ridgecrest, California, grew up in Gorton, New York, and has lived in Lawrence, Kansas the last year. During high school and college, Chris worked at Sears & Roebuck from 2007 to 2011. In 2012, during college, he worked as a legal intern for Broome County, New York District Attorney's Office. Chris volunteered as a disaster relief individual, assistant caseworker, and community relations specialist for the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, from 2012 to 2013. 2013-14, Chris worked as an English as a second language volunteer teacher for World Teach in the Marshall Islands in Micronesia. When he accepted our offer to become a police officer, he was employed as a corrections counselor and parole officer for the Kansas Department of Corrections, 2014 and 15. Chris has a BA in political science, BA in psychology, and was selected for a congressional award and presidential award. He's a holder of a provisional patent, enjoys real estate, and spending time with his wife and their puppy. Tyler Wyatt. Officer Wyatt was hired October 6th. He was born in Kansas City, Missouri, grew up in Kearney, Missouri, and now lives in Kansas City, Missouri. He's going to relocate to Ottawa soon. Tyler has been an automotive mechanic for 2 years and a diesel mechanic for 1. He's very excited to begin his law enforcement career with the Ottawa Police Department and is honored to serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining our force. Okay, moves us on to item 13.
Request for approval of charter ordinance exempting the City of Ottawa from provisions relating to the city manager form of government.
This ordinance will exempt the city from the provisions of L 2015, Chapter 88, Section 11 of the House Bill 2104, and this will be addressed by our City Attorney, Mr. Blaine Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. As we discussed at the study session on Monday, this is a charter ordinance as opposed to an ordinary ordinance. A charter ordinance uses the city's constitutional home rule authority that the voters of this state approved almost 50 years ago this year, and allows cities to opt out of non-uniform statutes. The statutes in question concern the movement of local elections as well as the elimination in statute of the city manager form of government, which was, unfortunately, I don't want to say it's an oversight, but it was eliminated and some of those statutes were moved somewhere else and some of them were not replaced at all. So in order to make clear the intent of the voters of the City of Ottawa, who in 1970 moved to the city manager form of government and in 1972 moved from 3 city commissioners to 5 city commissioners, we want to put all of that in a charter ordinance. We also want to clarify what happens now that local elections have been moved from April of odd-numbered years to November of odd-numbered years, and terms of office will begin, instead of in April, they will begin in January of the following year. This charter ordinance will also extend those terms that would have expired in April of 2017 and April of 2019 to January of the following year, and will put the city on the November November odd-numbered year election cycle as well. So I'll stand for any questions that any of you may have at this time.
So, Mr. Finch, just to summarize, so that when our citizens are watching this, nothing is being changed here. This is simply to take care of and reestablish what we've had because of the actions taken by the legislature this year regarding elections.
Yeah, the terms of this charter ordinance simply restate the way things have gone on in the city of Ottawa since the 1970s, based on actually three elections where the majority of the citizens of Ottawa voted for this form of government and this number of commissioners. The only thing that will change under this charter ordinance is the length of those terms as we move from an April to a November election cycle. And as you said, Mr. Neinstead, these changes were made necessary by legislative action. This is not something the city would have done otherwise.
And this same type of legislative action by local governing bodies is taking place in almost every city across this great state because of the significant change in how we've done elections in 150 years.
Yes, that's correct. The League of Kansas Municipalities has sent out guidance on this issue and made recommendations that cities adopt charter ordinances very similar to this one in order to address those changes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move that we approve the charter ordinance exempting the City of Ottawa from provisions related to the city manager form of government.
Is there a second? Or any other discussion?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Mayor Dickinson?
Yes. That passes, and we move on to item 14.
Request for approval of charter ordinance exempting the City of Ottawa from provisions relating to the filling of governing body vacancies and providing substitute provisions on the same subject.
This ordinance will exempt the city from the provisions of L 2015, Chapter 88, Section 71, which, do you have more to add to this?
This is the second charter ordinance this morning. Those L's that you read in chapters, those are the session laws of the state. Those are how we address bills that have been passed but have not yet been added to the statutes. They'll be given a statute number as the revisor's office codifies them, a process that you all just went through yourselves in terms of the city code. This charter ordinance clarifies how the commission fills vacancies if a vacancy occurs on the board. You had a charter ordinance that had been passed back in 1990 that had one process. You had a conflicting ordinary ordinance that set out a different process and different timeline in 1998, and this just clarifies one process and also addresses some legislative changes that were again made last year in terms of vacancy filling. You're opting out of the state's process and instead using your own. Your process will simply be that the commission has 60 days to fill a vacancy, so you can advertise and bring in people who are interested and go through an interview process. And then if you have a tie, there'll be a casting of lots in order to break that tie if the remaining 4 commissioners can't decide on one candidate over another. And there's a tie, there can be a casting of lots to break that tie. It also clarifies that appointment will be until the next election, just as you have done recently with the appointment of Commissioner Graves. That individual will serve out to the next election, and then there'll be an election at that point to determine who fills the rest of the term. So we let the public and the voters decide as quickly as possible on that replacement that you all select. Any questions?
Mr. Finch, we, as you had indicated in your comments, we had just recently gone through this with the appointment of Commissioner Graves. Is it changing? I mean, is the process changing dramatically from what, should the public see anything if there were to be a vacancy? Is there a tremendous change between what you're proposing that we adopt and what we have just completed?
No, not a drastic change. The state legislature, their change would have required, if you had not filled the vacancy within 60 days, that you hold a special election immediately. The cost of that to the public would be, thousands of dollars. And so instead of doing that, this simply gives you the 60 days to fill the position. If no candidates were to come forward, or for some reason you needed additional time, there could be some additional time, but otherwise nothing would change. You would notify the public as you did this time. Any interested applicant would be able to submit their name and go through the interview process, and so from the public standpoint, this will not look very different at all than what just happened with Commissioner Graves.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move that we approve the charter ordinance exempting the City of Ottawa from provisions related to the filing of government or governing body vacancies and substitute provisions.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Dickinson?
Yes. Passes. moves us on to item 15.
Request for approval of ordinance amending Article 8, Countryside District, Section 8-201.
This ordinance will define limited agricultural uses of the zoning regulations, ordinance number 3501-05. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the amendments by a vote of 4-0, and this will be addressed by Community Development Director Wendy Lee.
Thank you. Yes, this item, earlier this year, a question came to us about what does limited agricultural mean. It was a term used in our zoning ordinance, but it didn't have a lot of clarity. And so in that circumstance, with some communication with our city attorney, I crafted a memo that says this is how I would interpret it. As you well know, the zoning ordinance gives the power of interpretation to me, but because we wanted to have something in record just in case it came up again 6 months from now and hadn't made a change, we would have a document to go back to. So we'll do things like that. We'll say this means this. Since we've done that, then our next step was to actually come and ask for an amendment. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing, had these descriptors in as to what limited agricultural meant in the Countryside District. So it's not saying that agricultural means this everywhere else. It just means where the term was used in the Countryside District. The Countryside District is a district that is primarily for large rural residential tracts. It'll have some limited, as we said, agricultural activity that someone may want to have out there, but it's more of a residential area than it is an agricultural area. It's intended to be sort of the bridge between the big 80 and 160 acre ag tracts and area that's inside the community that may be at a more dense scale, where homes are very close together. This would most likely be tracts that are quite a bit apart from each other. And so our standards were to allow, to more frame up what large animals could be and what minimum acreage you would need to have in order to have horses or cattle. And ponies, sheep, goats, which are kind of the smaller things that we see more typically on this kind of a thing, that they could be on tracts that were at least 5 acres. And then if you grow agricultural products, you could have a stand and that kind of thing, and just frame that out. As with any zoning amendment of this kind of nature, where we're sort of creating our own, bridging between what's allowed in ag and what we would see in other parts of the community in the residential districts, we've crafted that ourselves. It may be something that over time gets amended, much like we go back and forth at different times about what's the appropriate size for a garage, depending on your circumstances. So it's the kind of thing that a couple of years from now someone could come in with something and we go, you're right, that makes absolute sense given your circumstances, and we'll consider a change at that time. But in the meantime, this would be a more framed definition of that, giving good parameters to folks that may be wanting to add some uses to their ground. There's not very many tracts zoned in Countryside at this time. Any questions?
I have several questions / comments. First of all, and I know that this goes way broad, but your department has changed its name. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you address with the public what it is your department's name is now?
Sure. We have been the Planning and Codes Administration Department for about a little over 10 years, maybe 12 years. Previously that was Planning Department. But I advocated earlier this year and to the city manager that we consider amending the name to Community Development Department. He agreed. That was put into the codification that you all adopted. The Community Development Department is a more common descriptor when people come from community to community, so when we're looking with developers, what have you, but more appropriately describes our department. We are not just doing planning and zoning and code administration, whether that be nuisances or building codes. We're working with neighborhood revitalization. We're working with bike ped. We're working with healthy communities. We're doing things that we believe are a broader community development activity, and so that folks don't see various members of staff acting in one of those capacities and go, wait, that doesn't seem to fit with my idea of code administration. Code administration is one of the things we do.
Great. The second part of my question, and it actually starts with a comment, that it's when we have issues like this and when we address issues like this, I think this is so important to know why an individual may want to come to our study session. Because when items like this come up, we really take this into advisement, and we talk about this in great detail at our study session, which is every Monday at 4 o'clock. So this particular ordinance, amendment of an ordinance, we discussed at great detail on Monday. And I know sometimes people will stop me and say, it seems like when you have your meetings, you just run through things really quickly. But the public needs to know that if they want to know a deep dive and want to know more information, this particular ordinance was brought to us on Monday, and we discussed it for quite a while. And we discussed the fact that I, who live in the middle of the city, I cannot now put horses on my small little land. I mean, we discussed how this works in great detail. So just another reason that we should probably invite individuals and ask them to please come to our study sessions so they can learn more about ordinance like this. Saying that, though, that doesn't mean that we're changing everything for the city. And I know that you said that. I just want to spell that out again. That doesn't mean that down here by Forest Park, you're now going to see goats.
Right. No, that's fair. I would actually add that not only do you discuss it, but the original public hearing was called August 18th, the public notice. And when that happens, that's when people know when we're going to have the meeting. But we actually discussed it at 2 study sessions and 2 planning commission meetings, too. So it had a lot of other folks' input as well as staff's and the attorney. So it goes through a process, as does any amendment, and it shouldn't be unless it's an error. It should go through a process of good discussion, and then it has an opportunity for rediscussion at some point in the future. But yeah, Countryside Edition is primarily on the edges of the community, with a few exceptions, and there's just not that many grounds zoned that way right now.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner?
I would move that we approve the ordinance amending Article 8 Countryside District, Section 8-201.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kaler,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Graves,
Yes.
Mayor Dickinson.
Yes. Passes 4-0, and it moves us on to item 16.
Prairie Spirit Trail.
A group of citizens focused on issues downtown, along with staff, gave consideration to resolving the trail gap along Walnut. This committee recommends the Prairie Spirit Rail Trail be formally installed in the middle of Walnut from 1st to 5th with bike lanes painted as well as drive lanes to enhance the safety of bicyclists and create better expectations for drivers as well. And Wendy will also talk about this.
I think we're going to go from south to north, so that's not how I was going to talk about it, so I have to get my mind around. Thank you very much. Okay, so a group of citizens has been meeting, and we spent a lot of time looking at Walnut in particular, and I know that the commissioners also took a walking tour of that area, and you're very familiar with this. But for a number of years, when the city has done surveys about biking needs in the community, this topic comes up every single time. And has since the inception of the trail. We're fortunate to have the Prairie Spirit Trail go from the depot all the way south of the community. But while the trail, the railroad line originally went down the middle of Walnut, when the trail development was originally occurring, there was some concern about where should the bike lanes be. And at that point, there just was, the decision was we'll just allow people to merge in with traffic and go along with traffic down through there. But it was interesting to me that every single time, we could be even talking about biking around schools, and we would get a comment about, we need to have something done here. Now, what's further interesting about that is most of those surveys were done locally, but last year, or 2 years ago when we did the Connect Ottawa plan, we actually facilitated that survey a little bit broader, and users of the trail who come from outside the community also commented that new users to the trail were oftentimes sort of, wait, there's no signage, I'm not familiar, it's the first time I've been here, and I unloaded at the depot and I want to go way south of Ottawa, what am I supposed to do here? And so this has been something that staff has looked at over the last year, 2 years, even when Bill was here, for a resolution. We actually in the spring had planned for this project, for a project to happen in the spring. But because there was a group looking, and we were particularly focused on Walnut, we elected to say, well, let's have a lot more community input into it, and held the conversation back. And interestingly enough, the original staff solution is not what's proposed here. So this is a product of a lot of input and discussion resulting in something different. The proposal that came out of that group to you as the governing body was to install the bike lane in the middle of the street where, frankly, at one time the rail line was. They looked at 3 different alternatives as concepts from the city engineer, and my kind of comment, Mike, I think, was agreeing with me that any of the 3 solutions were better than what we have now, and that all of them have pluses and all of them have minuses. But that what we have now just simply isn't acceptable any longer in our community. And so after looking at it, they had started off again at the beginning of their process with a pretty determined where they wanted to go, but after the engineer worked through it and looked at some of our standards, he recommended, he showed them 3 options, but said, here's the pluses and minuses. And some of the minuses for having bike lanes on the side of this street, similar to what we have on North Main, is that in contrast down here, we have an awful lot of driveways that are crossing, parking lots and other things that are crossing, and that some of that movement on the side of the road mixed in with parking could make a bicyclist very difficult to see. We looked very long at having both lanes on one side of the street. That actually was the preferred alternative that staff had come at it with in the spring, and it was the preferred alternative of the committee at one point. But again, the driveways and then the addition of needing stop signs at every street that we have stop signs at now, combined with that some drivers may not expect a bicyclist to turn left and or right in front of them crossing 2 lanes of vehicular traffic, could result in some traffic accidents that the whole point here was to improve safety. So the final solution was, from the safest perspective of the group that was looking, was to put them in the middle, meaning that if you're a car, you're going to be watching what's coming at you from the other if you're crossing both through the bike lanes, but if you're not going to have to encounter the bicyclist. And so that was the solution. Now, having done that, they looked at the parking and other things, and as we had told you earlier, the solution was going to result in, and I'll just go up the block here a little bit, the 300 and 400 blocks have a lot of residential on the west side. Parking on the east side is kind of minimal, but where it has been would be eliminated, and the parking would be available on the west side. In the 100 and 200 blocks, we shared with you in on the memo that parking would be eliminated. The committee was aware of that, but those are the 2 blocks that have a lot more parking lots on them. For example, in the 200 block, we have parking on both sides of the street. In the 100 block, we have a very large parking structure with not very many uses here. There's uses up here on on Main, but generally speaking, when we've done our surveys, the parking lot has been quite vacant. We held a meeting with the neighbors, and in the process of letting them know, we heard from 2 neighbors, specifically the Antique Mall and then subsequently Charlie Adamson at Adamson Brothers. And we think that we can retain some parking there and still comply with our MUTCD standards, which is the width of the parking spaces and the widths of the lanes. The bike lane area is 10 feet with a 1-foot buffer on each side. And at every intersection, there would be 3 delineators inside that buffer, total of 6 on each side of the intersection to help guide cars not to shortcut their turn, okay, potentially impacting a bicyclist. Then there would be 11-foot driving lanes. Those 11-foot driving lanes are a little narrower than what people are experiencing over there today. In fact, they're quite a bit narrower. There's 2 reasons for that. One, it's what we need to do in order to retain some parking where we can. Moreover, it is intended, and we hope it will be successful in reducing the speed. This is a 20-mile-hour zone, 20-mile-per-hour speed limit area. There's been some additional signs put over there, but people are frequently driving faster than that. Mm-hmm. That makes it less safe, again, for the bicycling and pedestrian use that we want to encourage in this area. So narrowing the lanes, if you study out there, that will actually help do that. So in the 100 and 200 blocks, so we'll look at the 200 block. As you can see from the image, it appears that there will be the 9 foot of width necessary to allow 3, maybe 4 cars to be parked here. We don't want to get too close to the intersections at any of these locations, okay? That's just so you can see around them. Again, bicyclists are moving at a different rate than cars. So we believe that those will be able to be retained. But you can see the curb line here is not the same as it is here, nor here, which means these vehicles will not be allowed to remain parking there and still have good 11-foot lanes here, okay? So I think we've solved that. In the 100 block, the property line is about where that building line is, and there's just a tiny little sidewalk right in front, and then some parking, some area they've been using for parking. But if you follow the curb line, the reason we had said no parking is because when you get up in here, it's going to be very difficult to achieve that. The curb line moves, by the way, in some of these blocks. In fact, all of them, the curb line shifts mid-block. It's not, if you go look at it, you're going to find, wow, it actually does that around town. That's not the only place it does it, but it's less consistent here than anywhere else downtown. Okay, so you drive down Main, it's a very consistent curb line. It's not on Walnut. So that is part of the difficulty here, but that's also part of what would have been challenging for a bicyclist, because the bicyclist will see the curb line moving. The driver won't pay attention to the fact that the bicyclist has less room to work with. Okay, so another good reason to put it in the center. Mike went out this morning and met with one of the people in the office. Charlie wasn't available at that time, but did talk with his wife about, we believe that we can keep one, maybe two very angled parkings there. By MUTCD standards, it does not fit. So that would be a departure from our policy. It would need your, you would need to understand that if you want us to retain those, we would like to have you say that. And then Public Works would do their very best to try and get those in. Mike, I don't know if you want to come and say any more about the conversation.
When I met with Mrs. Adamson this morning, I made it real clear that we may be able to do that and tell her that we would. Typically for MUTCD standards, we're looking at a 45-degree angle for a parking stall. I believe we have enough room. I didn't have time to get the measurements to make sure that we could do that by decreasing the angle to, say, a 30-degree angle. But I feel that if you guys will bless off on this, we can do everything we can to accommodate them and leave some parking there for them. And in talking with Mrs. Adamson, she seemed happy with the fact that we were trying. So
That would be in place of those four that are visible right there now, that are straight in?
No, right here, right in front of their building.
Oh.
It's just that on occasion, they have people that park near their front door. It's not, by my measure, it's not a full park. It doesn't meet MUTCD now because the curb, the gutter line is right here, and there's just not enough distance there for a for a 90-degree angle by standards either. The vehicle sticks out into what you would perceive to be the lane. But if it's at an angle, which the other reason for an angle is, as I said before, there are going to be 3 delineators on each side of that bike lane. You'll need to come to it from the north. You can't, well, you can always do all kinds of things. It would be impractical to try and turn a 90 across those from here. Okay, because you're crossing the delineators, and we're really not encouraging that again, right? We have the bicyclists in there. So this would mean that people would need to come at it from either either side first, or do something they probably shouldn't do, so I won't say that. So they would need to come to it from First Street. I should mention, too, that we've been focusing on the bicyclists because, as you know, there are sidewalks, the best of which, the most continuous of which, is on the west side. Because of the parking lot here, we don't have a sidewalk here. This one is what defeats both sides of the street. But pedestrians could walk there, don't get me wrong. It's just not as safe and separated as it is other places. I think in the future, when we look at our parking lots, and we're looking at them now, we would do some additional improvements. But even at this location, that angled parking, we would need to retain with overhang an ability for a 5-foot walkway that would provide an accessible walkway should you be using the trail. So that remains open, which is true for the entire length. And we looked at some individual panels that will eventually be replaced in order to make that a very accessible route as well. So we've been focusing on bicyclists because that's what gets kind of lost here. The pedestrians always have had to go back to the sidewalks on the side of the street.
Mrs. Lee, can you address with the listening public about the citizen group and about this being citizen-led? How many people did you have? How long have you met?
Okay.
All about.
We had let me back up just a bit and do this from memory. We had an application earlier this year that caused us to question what kinds of uses did we allow downtown, and the Planning Commission asked that there be a group of citizens to look at some of the objectives for the downtown area and determine, could we amend our, do we need to look at where we've got our boundaries, do we need to look at our regulations, could we look at standards, could we look at the aesthetics? And so we had a group of folks, there's several people that are associated with Main Street, both the Chamber and FCDC gave me some names, and then there's one Planning Commission. There's about 8 of them in total. They've been meeting since May, a couple of times a month, sometimes 3, sometimes once, but they've met a number of times over the summer. They walked the area multiple times with us and then on their own, and they've looked at everything from the trees and the health and asked Tree Board to take a look at some things. They've walked looking for where are the breaks in the sidewalk, what could we do with this. They were advocating to you to allow liquor in the sidewalk dining section of the municipal code, as well as looking at the zoning and the comprehensive plans. The comp plan amendments that you recently adopted also came from that group. And then it's our hope to do a downtown master plan now, because they've speculated that this needs to be much bigger than what we initially started with, had to do with residential uses. But that group spent a lot of time looking at this solution in particular, and felt that the middle of the street was the right thing. We haven't really had anyone challenge us on the middle of the street issue. It's been more just around, okay, how do I accommodate what I need to do? And we did have a public meeting, had several folks there, including people from the committee, and invited everybody adjacent. Not everybody made it, but we've had other conversations outside of that. So, and it's pain at the end of the day. So,
I appreciate that you did talk to the Adamson family this today and tried to work some of those things out, because we do value the input of our citizens. At the same time, like you've said, this is an ongoing process, and there have been public meetings, and there have been publications and information available online and in the lobby here at City Hall. So citizens should know that a lot of times we do hear from people when it gets to this stage when we're about ready to approve something, and that's sometimes hard, because although we'd like to bring their feelings into it and their ideas, by this point it's really been going for 6 months or 12 months or 5 years or whatever it may be. But like you said, it is pain, and maybe address that, either one of you. Are there any other improvements that are planned as far as right now, other than just the paint that goes on the street?
well, and I should have called attention to, there'll be paint at the intersections too, which will help people understand that the lanes move just a tiny bit. There would be some no parking signs added, just like we've had recently had some speed limit signs, and I don't know if stops. There may be some additional signage we have to do. We'll do some stop bars and things like that for the bicyclists to be sure they really do understand they're still subject to those things. I think that's it.
I think Wendy covered that well. I don't really have anything to add to that at this point.
I do think this is the first step in a redevelopment of that area, and I think this is one of those times when we need people to be a little bit patient and allow this to kind of take effect while we are also, like you mentioned, looking at the parking lots, looking at some of the green space around there, trying to figure out how to improve the visual appeal of Walnut Street, but also the redevelopment of the lots along there as well. So it's something that takes time, but this is just one step of many.
And they really were appreciative of the communities and the governing body's interest in their area. Most of the property owners were pleased to see activity happening there and some things that Public Works is doing over there as well. So I think the overall was, we're glad you're looking at it and helping us stimulate this area of our downtown.
Mayor Dickinson, I appreciate your remarks, because I think that's important to remember that this is a works in progress and we're taking it a step at a time. But what's exciting about this is that this is citizen driven. We are focusing upon a specific area, trying to make it look better. And some of the things that are going to happen are exciting, like art on the back of the buildings. And if you look at the Lawrence Journal this morning, you will see where they discussed the East 9th Arts Corridor at the City Commission meeting last night, and they are doing a lot of the things on that corridor that we're talking about here. And you can even download the presentation that was made. And if you look at that and then you think about this eventually, it's exciting. It's exciting, and it says something about our community. And I'll also tell you that my wife and I were in another community over Labor Day, and one of the reasons we went down is because they have a building art festival where the artists in town get together start on a weekend, and they start painting murals on buildings down there. So, and we saw some of that work, and it was just kind of neat to look at.
Any other questions, comments? Questions, comments together, that's often what they're comments. Okay. Let's go ahead, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
I would move, gosh, I'm not sure what we're moving on. I guess approval of this plan for the change for the bicycle Prairie Spirit Rail Trail path from Walnut from 1st to 5th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Dickinson?
Yes. That passes 4-0, and we move on to item 17.
Request for approval of Accessibility Advisory Board ordinance.
Ordinance amending the size and quorum requirements for the Accessibility Advisory Board, and Michelle Stegman will address this.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. The Accessibility Advisory Board was created by ordinance in 2013. The role of the board is to advise the City Commission on matters related to accessibility and serve as an advocate for citizens with disabilities. The Accessibility Board is seeking your concurrence with the requirements to repeal Ordinance 3835-13 that would amend 3 sections, specifically addressing quorum requirements, and which would make changes to the term appointment and vacancy language to match the municipal code that was changed during the codification process. City staff conferred with Blaine Finch, city attorney, to address revising the actual ordinance, which we reviewed on Monday. And there have been, and the reason for this is there's been times when we have not had a quorum at our meeting. We're currently down 1 board member. We are looking for a board member, by the way. Okay. And so anyone listening, please contact me or city staff to look into applying for that actual position. So I don't know if you have any questions or if you request that I talk about the ordinance further or have questions for Lane.
So we just need to clear this up so that you can have meetings and be able to move forward as a board. Okay. Do we have any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner.
I move that we approve the changes made to the Accessibility Advisory Board ordinance.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Dickinson?
Yes, that passes. That moves us on to report by the city manager.
So, Commissioners, just kind of along the lines of what Commissioner Kaler was talking about, how we discuss this in study session and how we encourage citizens to come. Some citizens may be wondering why we did not have the water rate increase on here associated with the raw water line project we're doing. And the reason is that we like to do those things at night so that there's a better chance of the public showing up and having questions. That gives us 2 more study sessions that you can ask questions on that subject and that citizens can attend if they want to ask those questions or if they want to contact you and ask those questions and bring those forward. So that's part of the transparency effort that we have always tried to do, and we continue to try to be as transparent as what we possibly can in doing the business of the public. So a reminder that there is a time change. I know what your agenda says, but the joint meeting today with the Franklin County Commission with the school district starts at 11:30, and it is hosted by the county. And this is going to be your legislative dinner. And I believe you have before you the 2016 legislative priorities. If those look familiar, we've reworked those from 2015, and I would suggest to you that the most important issue that you can talk about with your legislators, and you will have two there, you have Representative Finch and you will have Senator Tyson, is to emphasize that cities operate under constitutional home rule. It is a significant difference, it is an important difference versus statutory home rule. Constitutional home rule for cities was adopted by the voters of this state 55 years ago. 55 years ago. It is in the Kansas Constitution, and it grants cities the right to home rule. That is an important power to protect, and I don't believe that local governments, I don't believe that cities, because it is granted to cities, okay? I don't believe that cities have worked hard enough to emphasize that and protect that spatial privilege we've been given by the citizens of this state with our legislators. So I would just ask you to keep that in mind. I have two more things. One of them is just a little trivia note. Since Commissioner Graves joined the governing body, you now have three city-associated individuals in the leadership Franklin County class. You have Commissioner Graves, you have Public Utilities Director Dennis Tharp, and you have Human Resource Director Stegman. So I think that speaks well for us. You didn't know they were doing that, so we could get that little bit of trivia in there, did you? And finally, I'd like Blaine to join me at the city attorney, Mr. Finch, join us. And to again say publicly that Representative Finch, most of us were there at a lunch on the 12th day of October, and Representative Finch, I was going to say Flinch, can't make it Flinch, received the Intergovernmental Leadership Award along with another representative from the state. And here's what this award says from the League of Kansas Municipalities. For outstanding leadership in support of a strong intergovernmental city and constitutional home rule. Constitutional home rule. This is a rather prestigious award that's given out by our statewide professional, when I say our, I mean yours, group every year, and there have been some years when it hasn't really been given out. And if you look in the League of Kansas, in the League Government Journal, you will see who missed the group that Representative Finch is a part of. I'm so proud of the work that Representative Finch not only does for his community, and he has worked for this community most of his adult life, starting at 18, I think. When most 18-year-olds were, well, I will tell you what, I was 18. But I wasn't as responsible as city attorney here. And he has a great love for his community and for local government and the citizens of this state that he serves. So I'm going to say again, congratulations.
Okay, that moves us on to reports by city commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Reed.
I just wanted to acknowledge again the Lights On After School, the after-school program that Ottawa has. I think we are very fortunate to have that, and I hope the funding is able to stay in there. I know every year it's a struggle, but I know how important that is in this day and age with everybody working, to have a place for kids to go after school that is not just a place where they go and sit and play on a computer or sit in front of a TV, but they actually can get their homework done, they can work on fun things and learning things and stuff. So I'm so appreciative of that. I've got several of my grandchildren have and continue to participate in that, so I'm just very appreciative of our community with that program. So.
Commissioner Kaler.
Adding on to what Commissioner Reed had to say, we will not have a city commission meeting. We will have study sessions, but not an official city commission meeting before many of the children in our community celebrate Halloween, which happens to be on a Saturday this year, if you don't know. Please be watching out for children. They are not watching out for you. They are thinking about the Tootsie Roll Pop that they're going to get at the next house. So please be watching out for children. They are our greatest resource here in our community, and we certainly want them to have a fun and safe Halloween. Saying that, I also, speaking about fun and safe, I appreciate Representative Finch being here. I know that he serves a couple different roles in this particular meeting. I appreciate him being our city attorney, but I really appreciate the fact that he represents us in Topeka. And so thank you for keeping our community safe and for advocating for our community in the best way possible. So thank you, and congratulations on your award.
Commissioner Graves.
I just want to mention something building off of what Michelle had said about the Accessibility Advisory Board. They are down a board member, and it is sometimes difficult finding people willing to serve on these boards. So if you're interested, contact her for more information.
Okay. I have a couple things here. First of all, if the city manager would join me. His organization, the International City County Managers Association, had an award for him, and it reads, ICM Leaders at the Core of Better Communities in honor of 35 years of service to local government, to Richard U. Neinstedt. So, good to see you here too. We'll do it this way. One more. We got to surprise him with that one. That's always fun.
Never get to do that.
You want to speak? Please do. Please do. You deserve it.
Well, I guess I had that wrong when you were asking me how many years I've done this. I was not expecting that. It is a labor of love, and I can think of no greater honor than to serve a community like Ottawa and to serve commissions like the commissions I have been able to serve since I came here. Many of you know I have some family roots in this area, so that makes it special also. Just thought I'd tell you that. And I appreciate this commission. I believe Commissioner Reed was the only one on it when I received an award from KACM. I'm not sure I really expressed this, but I was truly humbled that the commission took ownership of that. They were far more excited about it than probably what I was at the time, but they were excited about it and they wanted to celebrate it. And you've done this again with this, so we have great staff, we have great citizens, we have outstanding citizens in this community, and that's what makes us well poised to continue to be a sustainable city in the future. So thank you very much.
Danielle, 34 more years, and you can have your own.
That's right.
I do want to note, I want to thank the staff for their flexibility. I will note that I did bring up the water line and the rate increase. There's been several times at a state level where things are voted on before we say the ink dries, and I do think that this is something that's important enough that we should give a little time and not really have it presented on Monday and vote on Wednesday. And it affects all our citizens, not just property owners, but it affects business owners, and it just gives people time to prepare and have input. So I thank the staff for their flexibility and understanding. For those who don't know, happy Back to the Future Day.
Yeah. No, right? I saw it.
7:28 p.m. tonight. For those of you that don't know, this is the day that in the movie Back to the Future that they went forward to the future.
Yep.
So we are now living in the future of the future. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what Back to the Future is, if you're too young for that,
Shame on you.
skip number 2. Just do 1 and 3. We have not mentioned yet the OU celebration that happened this weekend. The Gibson Student Center and Gangwish Library were officially opened. I mentioned on Monday that those are great architectural additions to our community. I love when we go above and beyond and not just build a new building, but build something that's beautiful and that has a lasting effect on our whole community. So thank you to President Eichner and Mrs. Lee and all of the OU representatives that were there. Lots of great things happening in Ottawa, and so I encourage people to come out and be part of a board or other things. Is there anything else before we have announcements? So our schedule coming up. Today at 11:30, we have our joint city-county USD 290 legislative lunch. That will be at the County Commission Chambers. On the 26th, we have a study session at 4 o'clock. November 4th, the regular meeting. And on November 10th, the LKM Regional Supper in Olathe. If there's no other business, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.